This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, Citizen Net Reporter with White Plains Week, the City News Roundup show, joined by Jim Benerofe, my partner since 2001, and Peter Katz, who's been on show with us since 2007. And all of you council persons out there, we know the pressure you're under, and we sympathize. And right now, Jim, you've got the headlines. We're taping on St. Patrick's Day.
And here are the stories of the week for St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2017. Snowmageddon drops 9 to 12 inches on White Plains. City digs out and back to normal by the next day. Common Council keeps Fasney Ridgeway property, Parcel A, environmentally sensitive. Public hearing on Fasney campus project April 5th at the White Plains Performing Arts Center. This week we'll bring you another edition of Peter Katz's exclusive report, weekly report on Trump the President. Westchester County expects decision on airport leasing candidate by the end of November. Preet Bharara's interim replacement decides he will not bring charges against New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio at this time. Common Council votes to deny group home proposal to establish a group home for 14 disabled persons at 22 New York Avenue by 4-3 vote. Sustainable Westchester sets timetable for determining the next Sustainable Westchester rate and procedure for picking the next Sustainable Westchester provider. Nita Lowey will be at White Plains High School at 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, to discuss Trumpcare.
Okay, James, thanks very much. And now let's go very quickly to the White Plains Week Willow Newsreel March of Time, and that was the shocker of the week. A lot of snow. This is what was left yesterday along about 6 p.m. And next slide, you can see it did a lot of damage to paths. There was a lot of ice. And, of course, that's the depth. It looked about, and that's how it began on Monday evening. Just little flakes. And then by 7:20 in the morning, it looked like this, about 7 inches.
Had to be the heaviest stuff I ever had to shovel.
And
it was brutal.
And it switched off into heavy snow by about 9:45.
Oh, but the combination of sleet, ice, freezing rain, all of that stuff, and it stuck to the pavement.
Yes, and the DPW crews were really out, and I thought they did an absolutely terrific job.
They did a great job of building a wall in front of my driveway. I mean, you know, I thought Trump had been there. That's how good this wall was.
Yeah, well, this was difficult, but it also was very fortunate that it shifted over to sleet or freezing rain in midday.
Well, I thought the plowing was really excellent. They must have gone by my house. The city must have gone by my house, I would say, at least 10 times.
That's because you're on the show.
Well,
You think?
Maybe, you never can tell. But anyway, I thought kudos to the DPW and The men were really great, and they just did the job. But once again, a forecast that was slightly off by about 10 inches, but it was still bad.
Well, what happened was that the central low moved closer to the coast than had been forecast, so that meant that the really heavy stuff was a little further north. Up in Peekskill, for example, the mayor there declared a state of emergency, banned all traffic through Thursday at 7 a.m. That's how bad they were hit as you got away from our area. Originally, as you know, John, in the aviation forecast, the meteorologists put their heads together and they were predicting at Westchester Airport accumulation of 23 inches when all was said and done.
If it had kept going at the heavy rate we showed in the morning, from 7 to 10, we might have gotten that, but it didn't. It switched over. Once again, God watching over White Plains. Right? The Common Council had a meeting on Monday, not on Tuesday?
Wednesday.
Well,
Wednesday.
Wednesday. It was a special meeting. It had been scheduled on such short notice that even I didn't know about it. Although they'll say, well, you have to look at the website every day to find out what's going on in the city.
Right. And we had the council persons weigh in, and there were 2 no votes, and we'll have those first. We will see.
Actually, at first they had scheduled it for Tuesday. And
canceled it because of the
canceled or postponed it because of the weather conditions. I had been told that that it still had not been rescheduled when in fact they actually had rescheduled it.
Well, you know, it was a confusing afternoon, but right now let's go to a videotape which is soft and focused. We recorded it off of the internet to get these clips, and so there is nothing wrong with your TV set. And now we'll start with Beth Smaya's take. She voted no, and then we'll have John
And this
Kirkpatrick.
is on the French-American School project.
And this is what transpired, and it gives you the results. Here we go.
As referenced in the materials we received for tonight's meeting, but the primary sources used for identifying surface water features, the U.S. Geological Survey map and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation classified streams maps, show no water course in this area where the ditch is. Given the construction on Westchester Hills in 1977 to 78, this ditch became a connection between 2 subsurface drainage pipes, the twin 30-inch pipes from the Fasney property to the 148-inch pipe on the Westchester Hills property that goes around the tennis courts. And that is why it is, to this day, shown as an open ditch on the DPW drainage map. And this has been amended numerous times, the sheet 5C. And why I view it not as a natural water course or stream. Because of these factors, I will be voting no, 5C.
They all conclude that this water feature is a flowing water course. I agree. There's no arguing that. It was almost the key answer as far as I'm concerned. It is, however, the right answer for the wrong question. Consider that when rain falls on a roof, it goes into an aluminum gutter, into a downspout, into a street gutter, to our storm drain system, and from there to a system of pipes and culverts until it opens into a natural stream. That natural stream is a protected environmental feature under our code. The gutters, downspouts, pipes, culverts, and the like are not. They all contain running water, but they are not protected environmental features, and they are not covered by our environmental regulations. A water feature does not become protected until it is a natural stream. So is this water feature a natural stream? If you examine it, as Councilwoman Smader did in great degree, it becomes clear that it is an engineered feature, little different from an aluminum gutter or an underground culvert. It was rebuilt by Westchester Hills in conjunction with plans approved by our building department for the construction of tennis courts. It's required to have a stone bottom, be kept free of all obstructions, to have an engineered slope to it so that it flows, all in order to move the water through as quickly and efficiently as possible. All this so that it may then enter into another culvert and go under the tennis courts and then into a pond. From the pond onward, it is clearly a natural waterway and a protected environmental resource. Before that point, however, it is not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Kirkpatrick.
I hear what Council President Kirkpatrick and Councilwoman Smader are saying. I also hear what the number of people who have written to, I'm sure all of us, are saying. And frankly, personally, I think that a common sense approach says that Parcel A does not constitute an environmentally sensitive site. However, I cannot get past the wording of our own code and zoning ordinance, which to me is clear here. So I've read all the reports also, so I intend to vote for tonight's resolution declaring the site environmentally sensitive.
That it's clearly a water course and clearly an environmentally sensitive feature, and does therefore render the Parcel A an environmentally sensitive site. Our code defines water resources including perennial or intermittent water courses, ponds, lakes, reservoirs, retention basins, and watersheds. Therefore, and it also says any site, property, or location within 100 feet of any river, creek, stream, brook, or other flowing water course. Or, so whether you call it a stream or a brook is not dispositive here. People can call things what they want. Someone could be drawing a map and write, this is a creek. Someone else can write, it's a brook. Someone else can write, it's a ditch. What matters is, under our definition in the law, does it qualify as an environmentally sensitive feature? And I think it clearly does. So for that reason, I will be voting in support of the resolution. And to me, some people may feel differently about it, but it clearly is. And you can look at other water use statutes, federal statutes, and be surprised what's considered navigable and things like that. And it fits here. This also is running, I'm saying it could be intermittent, but this is barely intermittent. It's flowing all the time from everything I can gather from all the different people that have been out to see it. And Councilman Kirkpatrick, he gave me an example of a gutter, but the thing with a gutter is a couple hours after it stops raining, there's no water coming out of my gutter. But a couple weeks after it stops raining, there's water in that creek, in that water course. So from my perspective, this is pretty clear cut. We're going to call the question. Why don't we do a roll call?
Yes.
Mr. Kirkpatrick?
No.
Mr. Collier?
Yes.
Mrs. Cepona?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Smader?
No.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And there you have it.
In case you couldn't figure out what that was all about, the French-American school was trying to take the position that the revised site plan does not involve building on environmentally sensitive land, and therefore they should not be required to have to do a complete environmental review of the portion of the old Ridgeway Country Club where they now, on their revised site plan, want to build their school. And so there was the argument over whether this particular portion of the Ridgeway property was environmentally sensitive.
And the vote, 5 to 2.
And the vote,
that
5
it
to
is.
2, was that indeed it is, and indeed the French-American school must do a full environmental review of this portion of it. Now, under the state SECRA regulations, there was a concept called segmentation. And the segment of this property that they are now going to use under SECRA cannot be segmented, isolated from the property as a whole.
Which they were arguing it should be designated.
Right.
Now, what do we think is going to happen, James? Bring out the crystal ball.
That's a really good question. I think that they really need to decide one way or the other whether they're going to let them do this project or not. And I think that dragging it out is not going to help.
Well, a full environmental review is going to take quite a bit of time, and this may very well kick a decision beyond the upcoming November election.
Right. Well, the assumption is they will have to do a full environmental review. But they could decide not to do it. They could. We don't really know, but I would think you would have to environmentally review it.
Well, they just voted to declare it an environmentally
Right.
sensitive site, so they're going to have to do a review.
But
So,
the argument could be that, well, you already did review.
yeah, indeed,
that's right.
there could be such an argument made.
right.
We've already done it. That's done. It's
Yes,
answered.
right.
But then the argument could be made, well, you cannot engage in segmentation. You can separate one portion of this environmentally sensitive site from the whole,
Yes.
you see.
Well, a lot to talk about, and the hearing will be on the 5th of April, and it's going to be at the White Plains Performing Arts Center.
You think they're expecting a big turnout?
There might be, yes. I mean, at least we have 400 seats there, so that would be, and they don't have to set up any visuals. But anyway, that's on.
Are they going to sell tickets?
They could. Yeah. Tickets to speak. That would end it quickly.
Okay.
But now we come to the segment of the show that you've all been waiting for. Trump, the president, Peter Katz reporting.
Hey, buy your tickets right here and now. President Trump has released his America First budget. It makes dramatic cuts to the federal government while adding $54 billion in defense spending. The Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney gave a briefing. He had no apologies for cutting things that help the poor and middle class and the white Trump voters, for cutting things that protect the environment, for cutting things that protect consumers, for cutting research to find a cure for cancer and things like that, while expanding the things that help the rich and their defense contracting companies. Down in the budget by 31%, the Environmental Protection Agency, cut by 28%, the State Department. U.S. international aid programs, cut by 20%, the Agriculture Department, cut by 20%, the Labor Department, cut by 16%, the Corps of Army Engineers. Hey, you know what that means? That means they can't be called in to look at the FASNY project. Cut by 16%. Health and Human Services, cut by 15%. Commerce, cut by 13%. Department of Education, down 13%. Housing and Urban Development, cut 12%. Department of Transportation, 11%. Interior. Energy is down. Small Business Administration is down. Treasury Department, cut by 4%. Justice Department, cut by 3%. And what's up? About 6% for Veterans Affairs. Homeland Security gets about 7% more. The Defense Department gets about 10% more. He's proposing to dramatically restructure the FAA and the Transportation Security Administration. They want to privatize air traffic control, shut that down as an FAA operation, turn it over to basically the airlines to run, to control themselves. Now, that scheme has been pushed by a few Republicans on Capitol Hill now for years, but it's been dismissed as nonsense. Representative Bill Schuster, a Republican from Pennsylvania, has been a proponent of privatization. He is chairman of the House Transportation Committee. Turns out he received $148,000 in campaign contributions last year from the airlines. My. Such a thing.
What a coincidence.
When it comes to funding the Transportation Security Agency, guess who's going to be doing that? You and me.
Yes, sir.
They're going to pass along 75% of the cost of operating the security at airports in the form of higher ticket fees. You will pay when you buy a ticket on an airline. They will cut public broadcasting and cut the National Endowment for the Arts. The Trump budget will eliminate what's called the Essential Air Service Program. That was started in the 1950s, and what that does is to make sure that there is air service to the very small communities. There are about 200 communities in the United States that would not receive any kind of airline service were it not for the Essential Air Service Program run by the federal government. The Department of Homeland Security going up about $2.8 billion, as we said. Now, most of the TSA costs are to be shifted from the taxpayers in general to the airline users in specific.
And we will pay all of that because the airlines...
Now, this is significant for White Plains. The budget cuts, eliminates the $3 billion Community Development Block Grant Program. You've heard of that, my friends?
Yes.
This lets communities allocate federal funds toward housing and community projects that bolster and create affordable housing and jobs. It helps low and moderate income families. CD block grant money has been vital here in White Plains for programs such as Meals on Wheels, which provides senior citizens with the only food they get, housing rehabilitation, youth programs. Without community block grant development funds, White Plains may be hurting in certain areas.
Or
the question
we have
will
to
be,
raise it.
how are we
Raise
going
taxes
to
to pay
fund
for it.
the things that we have been funding? The low-income heating assistance program will be cut. This helps heat homes of the disabled, elderly, families with young children. In 1 year, it helped heat 9 million homes, protecting 23 million people from freezing. Those receiving help keeping their homes warm included 1.8 million veterans. Trump's budget plans to cut billions of dollars in funding to medical and scientific research agencies. This would cost several million jobs, so they say. Cutting the funding in this way will have devastating and generational-long effects, said Dr. Clifford Hudis, CEO of the American Society of Clinical Oncology, which represents cancer specialists. Trump will slash nearly $6 billion from the National Institutes of Health, which funds most of the basic medical research in this country. American Heart Association President Stephen Hauser said he was shocked by the budget proposal. He says you can save $6 billion today and spend $1 trillion down the road, according to his projections, because of all the sick people you will be creating. They project by 2035, up to half of all Americans will have heart disease, and the cost to the economy will be $1.1 trillion. Wow.
It takes your breath away.
It does indeed. Now, at the White House, they're still talking about President Trump's tweets claiming that President Obama had him wiretapped. There was a contentious news briefing yesterday where Sean Spicer, the press secretary, was trying to defend the president after comments came in a joint statement from Senate Intelligence Committee leaders, Republican of North Carolina Richard Burr and Democrat of Virginia Mark Warner, who said, based on their briefings, there is no evidence that Barack Obama ordered wiretaps of Donald Trump. The Russian television network, RT, controlled by you-know-who, Mr. Putin, paid General Mike Flynn, the former intelligence agency chief, more than $45,000 plus perks to speak at its 10th anniversary gala. RT also paid Flynn and his son to fly to Moscow and stay in a hotel and eat lavishly and to do other things lavishly.
Really?
The documents show that Flynn was also paid by a Russian airline and by a company called Kaspersky. You may have heard of that. They make antivirus software that's sold in this country. They are also tied with the Russian government, and each of them paid Flynn $11,250.
Isn't all this illegal, him doing all this?
It may very well be.
I mean, one would think.
Flynn finally declared himself to be a foreign agent retroactively.
Yeah, so
however, the law apparently is quite clear that retired generals are not allowed to take money such as Flynn took.
Yeah.
House Intelligence Committee ranking member Elijah Cummings sent a letter to Trump, FBI Director James Comey, and Defense Secretary Mattis accusing Flynn of violating the Constitution by accepting tens of thousands of dollars from an agent of a global adversary that attacked our democracy. Attorney General Jeff Sessions vowed on Wednesday to ramp up enforcement of drug crimes to combat what he says is a nationwide increase in violent crimes. That was in a speech he delivered in Richmond, Virginia, and he said what we need to do is go back to Nancy Reagan's Just Say No program.
That worked.
He said we should not be using medical marijuana. He said that
Really?
it doesn't help terminally ill people cope with their pain. He refused to admit that it helps to counteract opioid and heroin addiction, even though there is research in states that have legalized marijuana which shows lower rates of opioid and heroin addiction in those states than elsewhere. Parts of President Trump's 2005 tax return, look at this, folks, were made public this week. It revealed the president made $150 million in 2005. Anonymous pages, these pages here, were mailed to a biographer of Trump and a journalist named David K. Johnston, who brought them onto the Rachel Maddow show on MSNBC. They showed that Trump saved himself about $30 million, but was forced to pay that amount because of what's called the alternative minimum tax. The alternative minimum tax requires rich people to at least pay something. Trump has said one of the things he wants to do is eliminate the alternative minimum
Yes,
tax.
now you know why. Okay.
Have you had enough?
Right. It just goes on and on, my friends. Westchester Airport came up this week at the county legislature. This is the committee of the whole, which is virtually considering FRASCA, which presented a plan for how they're going to analyze the RFPs for the Westchester County Airport. FRASCA said they were going to put the RFP out, and whoever responded to operate the airport, they would vet them, and that the legislature would be able to make a decision on the airport by November, probably more like December, because that would be after the election.
Well, it would be after the
Yes,
election
it
for
would
county
be.
executive, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that'd be really fast for the legislature to do that.
You think politicians like to kick controversial things down the road until after elections?
Do they ever do that?
No, I've never heard of such a
No
thing.
way. They just take their due diligence and their time and want to vet it thoroughly.
Yeah, well, you know
like
what?
Congress.
Yeah, well, they're trying to vet this Trumpcare business.
Yes.
The Trump people are trying to call it Ryan Care. That's how much criticism is coming forth. We're recording this Friday. Tomorrow, Saturday afternoon at the White Plains High School, Nita Lowey is holding a town hall meeting on health care. There will be some experts, some health care people very active in Westchester there. It's at 3:30, doors open at the high school.
Two last items. The group home site planned for 22 New York Avenue. The council voted after a public hearing to approve that, but sort of reluctantly they expect that...
well, no, they turned it down.
They turned it down.
They disapproved
They turned it down. I apologize for that, but it probably will be overturned in the courts.
It could. The state has the power to overrule the city, I believe.
Right. And this is all time we have this week. John Bailey, for Jim Benerofe, and Peter Katz. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.